All right. Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Vibe podcast. I don't know why I felt the need to bring in Matthew McConaughey here, but I do live in Austin, Texas, so that could be it. But welcome back. So happy to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in and vibing with me wherever you are listening from, whenever you are listening from. In today's episode, I really wanted to do a lessons from my 20s and the completion of my Saturn return. Well, the part one completion I should get into, but we'll get into that. This is kind of like a follow-up episode to the Saturn return episode I did last year, where it was like, oh boy, everyone, we need to like debrief and chat about everything. And now I'm like, okay, we've completed, it's been a month since I turned 30. I can finally sit down and just brain dump, some of the things that I learned in my 20s. So I have some lessons and all of that. And I also have, what I'm looking forward to in my 30s, as well as maybe some, reflection for you as well, for you to kind of dive into yourself, maybe some journal prompts, things like that. And at the end, we'll pull a nice little oracle card for the vibe of the week, the message of the week. And that's where we're really kind of going in today's episode. I wanted to do a quick little vibe check, which is just my form of life updates and the vibe check of where life is at. If you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify, you can notice I'm very tan right now and my face is probably not as much. I was out on a boat yesterday. I had my friend Alyssa, who is the corporate raver. If you guys follow on social media, she was in town. So we all went out on a boat to celebrate her birthday, which was super fun. But this past week, just wow. Crazy week energetically. That was just so fulfilling. I feel like it was just a week for me to be like, hey besties, I'm here, I've arrived, let's do this kind of thing. As I've just been exercising this throat chakra again and expressing myself again, it's just really allowed me to feel like, okay, wow, I'm back in a way. I feel like I'm reminding myself of 25-year-old me, 26-year-old me, the version of me that I was before the self-doubt or what other people think and all this kind of stuff really bogged me down, and really slowed me down. I allowed it to, but I feel like I'm more me again in just a new refined way with all the wisdom, all the learnings and all of that kind of stuff, which I feel like I was talking about in episode 1. So I won't get carried away with that again. But last week was very much like, hey, here's a podcast. We're here. Hey, we're going to get back to YouTube weekly content. And I'm just going to make it happen. Today's Sunday, June 8th, 4/20. The podcast's supposed to go out tomorrow. I normally would be whatever. But no, here I am recording. I'm going to edit it. We're going to, do very minimal editing and just get this posted because I want this to be unfiltered and just have it go through. So it's okay if it's not perfect, So it was a lot of just putting myself out there and being seen again in a way that I really hadn't been. And I'm establishing all of these things that are important to me. And my boyfriend, he had reflected that to me. He's like, it's just really awesome to watch you work on these things that you're so passionate about. And that just felt, really good. And last week was also the first week that I had invested in a mentor again. I'm working with Maddie Maple, who was my coach actually when I first started my business. So we're kind of coming back around and getting some mentorship and investing with her again, which is really great because I just need that accountability of all right, I have all these ideas and things of what I want to do and how I want to show up. And I need that accountability to take me there. Right. So I really kicked that off last week. And then I also opened the doors for my one-on-one coaching again. In a new and vibey way. My one-on-one coaching container is called Vibey AF, which the AF stands for aligned and fulfilled. And it just feels really good to have this container out there with my one-on-one coaching because it just encapsulates everything with my coaching, from the mindset to the habits to the human design, all of these things. And it's for my ravers, my festival goers. It's for my ambitious ravers and festival goers, maybe who are wanting to create content or are creating content or want to have a business or do have a business. A lot of my current clients own rave businesses of some sort, or rave clothing businesses, or have their own business, or are creating content. I've just attracted some really incredible clients in the past couple of months, and who are really wanting to have that like fire lit underneath them and that support and groundedness that I really bring to my coaching. So it feels really good to have the doors open for this kind of portal of transformation. It's a 90-day one-on-one coaching experience. We meet every other week on Zoom for 60 minutes, and then I'm supporting them outside of those calls in Telegram. We're integrating human design all throughout it. And so I don't know how many spots I'm taking, but I do have a couple of calls with girls who are really interested in taking that next step. And if you feel that call as well, I'll leave the details down below. And this is something that's just going to be continuously open. And I'm just going to be kind of, launching some mini things here and there, some more free, accessible things and all of that kind of stuff in this summer, which I'm really excited about. But I wanted to just at least have my audience and community know, like, hey, here's what life coaching actually looks like for me. Here's what one-on-one coaching looks like with me. Because before, right, this was separated on 2 different pages. So now I'm just kind of like making the claim, making the statement. Here are those things, And things are just, really shifting in my life. And despite everything moving so quick, I'm still showing up. And I was, able to get my workouts in, spend time with my boyfriend, and then also take time for myself. So like, this is truly what it feels like to be living like a vibey AF life, because every day I wake up and I'm just excited to get after it. And I'm excited to just go for it and log in for my 9 to 5 and then do work for myself and then get my workout in and like show up for myself and get some sleep. And that's what it really comes down to when you're living a life that just feels very aligned and fulfilled. And I would love to help guide my fellow ravers and festival goers to getting to the same thing. So that's kind of the vibe check. On a more personal note, if you've been following me for a while, I was dealing with chronic hives. And for the past, several months, I haven't had chronic hives. I was on a medication called Xolair, where I had to get an injection every 4 weeks. And my last shot was in December. And at that point, I had made the decision to not get it renewed because I just wanted to see if my body, maybe acclimated, healed, whatever the word is. And so for the past 6 months, I had not had a single flare up. But as of Friday, a couple days ago, I had my first flare up in a really long time where, my certain areas were covered in hives, like on my thighs, back of my arm and everything. And then even yesterday after the boat, which like probably wasn't best for me to go on the boat and be in the sun, but I'm trying to not let this condition keep me from living my life. If you're someone that also deals with some type of chronic health issue of some sort, or an autoimmune disease or anything like that, like a condition, like I totally feel for you because it's like so debilitating to go through. And on Saturday, I had, feelings of that where I had more hives. I was feeling joint pain. I was getting more feverish. And it's exactly how I felt when the peak of this was happening to me, which was like the fall of 2023. So it's just kind of crazy to have like such a week of like all these up levels and transformations and like, reaping the rewards of just a lot of the hard work I've been doing for myself and, my business and everything, to then be brought back down to earth a little bit, and have, some health issues pop back up. So I'm going back to my allergist. I feel like I'm going back with a tail between my legs of like, it didn't work. They're back, and I'm just going to have to get back probably won't get back on the same medication. Probably will go back to that, but my body is much different now. I'm taking care of it in new ways and supplements and just taking really good care of myself. So I just need to figure out this, chronic hives thing, which it's like really unfortunate. There's just no test to really know what's causing it. Like there's just a lot of like science and data that hasn't been found with it. So on the flip side, everything's good, but I am dealing with that. But I know I've been here before. I will figure it out. And I have a really amazing support system that's just been there for me through it. And, I'll figure it out again. But that was a bit of a bummer, right? Because it kind of takes you back to that place where, back November 2023 was just awful. I was just covered in hives. I was having fevers. I was having muscle aches, pain, like all that kind of stuff. So it's hard to not like let your mind get back to that place, and just feel like it's the end of the world. But I was able to just kind of like, be like, you know what? I've learned so much. I've grown so much. There are ways for me to get through this, and I will get through this. So I'm kind of like in that phase of figuring that out, on top of, entering this next week of all the things that I have coming for me and towards me and all of that. So I've yapped long enough for this vibe check. But let me know how you're doing and all the things that are going on in your world. I would love to hear from you, especially if you're, on YouTube. Leave me a comment and all of that, or shoot me a DM on Instagram. But let's get into today's episode and the topic. So like I said, we're doing lessons from my 20s, as well as, the ending or completion of my Saturn return. And so I did want to just kind of like pull it back a little bit of what is a Saturn return for those that don't know. I feel like as we have entered Saturn in Aries, and, I feel like the term Saturn return is like definitely becoming more popular or more known by people. At least that's how I'm feeling about it, because I feel like I'm seeing a lot more content around it. Just from people posting that, they're entering their Saturn return and they're fearful about it, like blah, 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 blah. Or even, the astrology app that I love called Chani, Chani. She's doing a whole Saturn return like mini course if you pay for like her premium app, which is what I do. And I was like, dang, like I wish I would have had this during my Saturn return, because like I was not prepared. But anywho. So what is a Saturn return? So, in your astrology chart, right, you will have different planet placements. And so there is the Saturn planet, right, that is within your chart, because that is one of our planets. And sorry if you're not into astrology or you're not into the woo-woo, but this is, this is my life. This is what we're here for. Like, I love synchronicities. I love patterns. And you can see a lot of that with astrology. But how Saturn returns show up in your chart is depending on where Saturn is transiting for people. And if you don't know, Saturn is really that planet of like discipline, honestly. And it's the planet of just like teaching you lessons. And so how this can show up depending on, what planet it's, or what sign it's under, there's going to be a theme around that of like how Saturn personally shows up in your life, right? And your personality and those things, depending on that. But then also depending on where Saturn is then transiting in your chart specifically, it'll go under a certain house, because there's houses. If you look at like an astrology chart, you would be able to see. And so that will kind of give you maybe some themes of what you are going to go through during your Saturn return. When you have your Saturn in a certain planet or when you have your Saturn in a certain sign, for your whole life, right, in your birth chart, that will kind of give you some things around that. And so if you have your Saturn in Pisces, then you might have completed your Saturn return. And I've been saying like it's like a part 1, because we just shifted from Saturn in Pisces to Saturn in Aries like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I want to say. But come September, Saturn is actually going to go back into Pisces, because it's going to go into retrograde. And that's where like the planet like circles back basically in a way. And so that is going to be like our Saturn return part 2, essentially, which isn't anything for us to be afraid of. I've just been seeing it as, this is a time period now between September for me to really integrate some of these lessons that I learned and really take action on it. So that when Saturn comes back around, it's like, all right, you healed the things, you did the things, you moved forward on these things, like gold star for you, because I operate on a gold star system. I want a gold star. I want A+. Like that's just who I am. And so for me, my Saturn return really started kind of like 2023 era until now. And a lot had just really happened, for me with all of that. And so when you are going in your Saturn return, like I always like to share what this mentor had told me about Saturn returns. And she basically said, if you are not on the path that you are meant to be on, Saturn is here to like redirect you. It's not to punish you. It's to redirect you back into a place of alignment, is what it really is. I just wanted to double check too of like other themes of what Saturn really is. And so Saturn's really a powerful and significant planet often associated with responsibility, discipline, structure, and karma as well. So sometimes you will see like some balancing of karma throughout a Saturn return as well, but also like themes within your life. It's interesting too, because I'm a Capricorn rising, and whatever your rising sign is, there's like a ruling planet. And so my ruling planet is Saturn as well. So like sometimes when you meet a Capricorn rising, they've just been through it a lot because their ruling planet is also Saturn. So it's almost like we're no stranger to Saturn. How you can really take a look at this is to pull up your birth chart. So you can just kind of look up, astrology birth chart and pull it up. And that's where you'll be able to know, am I Saturn in Pisces? Am I Saturn in Aries? Am I even like Saturn later on? If you're not Pisces or Aries, then like maybe you've already passed your Saturn return. That could be if you're in your 30s already. Or if you're like earlier in your 20s, then you are going to be, approaching your Saturn return later in your 20s. So you could be Saturn in Taurus, Saturn in Gemini, like so on and so forth. That means you're probably on the younger end of your 20s. So you will enter your Saturn return later on. So I wanted to highlight that because what Saturn returns really can be for people, I honestly think it's just an invitation. And I also find it to be a mirror of like, are you really being who you're saying you're being? Are you really acting on these things, right? Like I said, Saturn is that planet of responsibility, discipline, structure, karma. Like, are you really following through on these things? And it also says it represents the lessons we learn through challenges and obstacles, pushing us to grow and develop a sense of responsibility. And it's like you're either going to rise and meet these challenges, or you might fail. And that's okay, because in that failing, you might learn something. And so this is where we'll get into my top lessons from my 20s. And I can kind of share some of the things that, were really critical in my 20s, but also around the Saturn return as well, because that's where I definitely encountered the most amount of growth. Like from 20 until 27, we were just following the path. We were just doing the thing. We were starting things. We were getting hints to our purpose, all of this stuff. But then 27 to 30 just like rocked my shit, honestly. Getting into this, we have 7 lessons here. And the first one is rock bottom can be a catalyst, which is so true. There are a lot of times I feel like I hit quote unquote rock bottom in my 20s. I felt like I hit rock bottom, when I was in college, and I had gotten to a point of recognizing that I had been binge drinking, binge eating, and my shorts didn't fit anymore. My high school body that I had was no longer that same body my sophomore year. I had been trying to heal from a relationship at that point, even too. I feel like I had another rock bottom where beginning of 2020, I went through a breakup. I got in a car accident. And that really shifted everything for me. And then, and the next rock bottom would definitely be the next breakup in 2023, where, I went through that whole thing. I started breaking out in hives. I had to go back to a 9-to-5 because I just could not financially sustain working for myself anymore. And I was just so burnt out. And so I could really think back to these like rock bottoms that were also like tower moments, which in tarot, if you know tarot cards, like the tower moment is like that sink or swim, like, life altering kind of thing that it's just, are you going to survive this or not, really? And I feel like it really allowed me to rise from those things. And it really was a catalyst, when I was going through what I was going through in college. I really had to learn how to like parent myself almost and be an adult in that way, and that I couldn't let these things get out of hand. And then, in 2020, I went through all those really like tough things for the first time, and I was able to really devote time to myself. I went to therapy for the first time in 2020. And then 2023, like, yeah, that was in the peak of like my Saturn return, where I just was like, all right, like it's time to just figure this out and just like heal and take the steps I need to take. So I went back to a 9-to-5. I tried in that relationship again, and then ended up, that didn't work out. And so then I took ownership of my healing afterwards. And then, even going back to the 9 to 5 was the best thing I ever did for myself for my career. And so it just allowed me to really be intentional on rebuilding myself back up, right? Even though it was definitely difficult, I was definitely emotional, but it allowed me to realize that I was capable in getting through anything that was thrown my way. And that brings me to number 2, which is healing is not linear, but it is so worth it. And a lot of the times I come back to this imagery, which I do have a butterfly tattoo, like a lot of girls do, but I am reminded of the cocoon phase, that a lot of the times healing is like the cocoon phase. And I know, right, that cocoon phase is not this beautiful thing. Like, you're in this cocoon, it is messy, it is uncomfortable, you're shifting, things are changing, and then you become this butterfly that is able to fly and spread her wings, right? And there was some times, a lot throughout my 20s and a lot throughout my Saturn return, where I was in this messy, goopy cocoon, and I was in this messy middle, and I just had to like keep going and keep doing my best. But I also learned how to have so much compassion for myself as I was going through it, because a lot of people don't confront these things. They don't tackle their healing head on. You might have people in your family where they just have not moved on or healed or grown or anything. And that's okay for their journey. But for me, and I'm assuming a lot of my listeners here, we care about some of these things, and we are being very intentional about the healing that we're doing, because we don't want to perpetuate these cycles, right? We don't want to continue these generational cycles, or we don't want to continue spiraling and being this way, right? Like, we just envision maybe a better future for ourselves and taking care of ourselves or whatever it may be. But it's not that that's easy. The easy route is to stay the same. The easy route is to be comfortable. The easy route is to just stay small and hidden and follow the path that we think we need to be following. Like, clocking in and out every single day, being married by a certain age, having babies by a certain age, having a house by a certain age, and a lot of people take that path, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But for those of you that are like choosing to walk a different path, or choosing to act differently, be differently than maybe how it was modeled to you, like, it's going to be hard, and it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be a non-linear path, and as I'm saying this, I think about my relationship with alcohol. I'm going to do a separate episode about this, definitely. But, I toyed around so much with my drinking habits in my 20s. I went to Arizona State, very prominent, party school, right? I didn't drink until college. And then I spent all of my college years really drinking and being a part of the social scene. And then I spent a lot of my mid-20s finding a better balance with it, until I got to a point, I think I was 27. I was going into my 27th birthday, where I just was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I didn't drink for a year and a half. And then last year I was kind of introducing it back, right? I was kind of like, let me just see how it is having it back. And I was also healing from, that same person once again, right? And I even think those healing experiences were very different, because the first breakup I had with that person, that breakup healing was very much like, I'm in my cocoon. I'm like just going to go inward, take care of myself. Whereas last year's healing from that person was very much like, I need to be out there. I need to be seen. I need to go meet people, like, and I'm going to drink, So it was like two like sides to the coin almost. And that healing wasn't linear. And now coming into my 30s, I am once again in this place of like, I don't need alcohol again. I had something that happened back in April that just really like set my perspective straight. And I just was like, you know what? This was a little bit of a messy kind of like place to get to this conclusion, but I'm so glad I have this insight and perspective now, because now I know I don't need to drink, And so to me, that's where like the healing was not really linear, right? Because I would like drink, then not drink, drink, then not drink. But now I'm feeling so clear on my mission and what I'm here to do. And like alcohol just really doesn't have a place in any of that. So that's number two. Healing is not linear at all, but so worth it. And what I can, express to some of you guys that are in this healing phase of your life. And it doesn't even have to mean healing from a relationship. Like it could be healing from yourself, healing from your past, healing just from being triggered, right? Or like even just healing from like a certain way of thinking. If you're like in a state of just shedding your identity, shedding like old versions of yourself, if you lived a certain way of life, but now you're living another way of life, like there is a constant state of healing that is always happening. And it doesn't necessarily have to be because you went through a breakup. Like I just definitely want to say that, because I've also had to heal within myself. Like I used to be super anxious and overthinking and hard on myself. Like I've been in constant healing with that relationship with myself. So I just wanted to also clarify that. The third one is a little bit more of a fun one. And it's going to be related to something that I'm launching later this month. And it really is saying yes to life even before you feel ready. Because as I was going through my 20s, I just really allowed myself to say yes to things that really put me in very uncomfortable spots. But I'm so grateful that I did that, because I wouldn't be sitting here today. In terms of moving to Austin, right? And accepting a job offer to move to Austin and moving away from home for the first time. And then, getting this idea about Vibe with Aid and taking action on it. And just so many like yeses and nos that even happened. It's like a total butterfly effect, right? That just really catapulted me into that next level and vision and all of those things that if I hadn't, like, who knows where I would be, right? Even like saying yes to like quitting my 9 to 5 and launching my coaching business. Like there's all of these things that I said yes to, but I was scared, totally scared. And I didn't feel like I was ready, but I did it, and I'm so grateful I did. And the one thing that really has transformed my summers, these past 2 summers, was having a yes era. And so I want to instill that in you guys, because having a yes era can just totally catapult you into that next level. And just like, it allows you to just embody that version of yourself that you might not even know is there, right? When you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, meaning like putting yourself out there to meet new people, right? Or saying yes to this invitation or this experience. Like when you start saying yes to these things, it really just allows life to open up really for you. And I'm really excited for the thing that I'm launching. It's going to be a free offer related to saying yes to things. But I really just want to encourage you, like, find a way to just start saying yes to life and just watch life open up for you, especially as we're about to get into this festival season and like summer and like all of these things. Like, it doesn't even have to be an expensive thing for you to start saying yes, like it could be just like free things and expensive things, like just looking on social media and finding like cool events to go to. Like, just start saying yes and just watch like life really unfold. Okay, moving into lesson number 4. This is a big one for me, and it all relates to authenticity. So the big lesson here around authenticity is that authenticity really does attract everything you desire. Like, your people cannot find you if you are not being authentic to yourself, right? And like, this really tied into kind of my part of the Saturn return where I was not being myself. And like Saturn really like held up a mirror to me being like, girl, you know who you are. Like, what are you doing? And this was all, tied to a previous relationship where I really started to doubt myself. And then, a business strategy that I thought I needed to do, but I didn't at all. And so this really like last 2 years has been like a coming home to myself again and reminding myself who I am and really owning that. And by doing that, it's attracted like literally everything into my life by being myself, right? Like the partner that I have today and the boyfriend that I have today is just amazing. And it's all because I was being myself and I was being honest with myself, true to myself. There were certain pinpoints that led to our relationship where I was expressing myself and just asking point blank, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? Where do you think we are? Not from a place of like, oh, I really want us to like end up together, but it was just to be like, how are we feeling about this? Because I like you, and I really have tried to get this throat chakra back up and open. Because for a long time, I just was like, conforming to what someone might have wanted to hear from me, or even social media, like saying the right thing to not get canceled or to be approved and get followers and whatever, right? And so I feel like I've just been really shedding that mask of people pleasing and coming into this more authentic version of myself. And I just know it's going to continue to pay off for me. And I think I could have gotten to this point a lot quicker. And I think that's, what I can encourage you, that if you are able to check in with yourself. Am I really being authentic to myself? Am I coming from an authentic place? And evaluating every decision, being like, is this in alignment with who I am / who I'm becoming? And like, just ask yourself that question and make changes immediately. If you have that like, oh, maybe we're not, I wish I would have done that sooner in certain cases, right? But I trust that all the things that happened needed to happen for my highest potential and growth, right? Because now I can sit here and be like, yep, I have no choice to be anyone but myself, because myself is great, right? And anyone who doesn't get it can see their way out, And by me being my authentic self, it's just going to create this aura that can bring people in, right? Whether it's people into my community, friends, clients, right? Followers, right? And that all comes from me just being myself. And I think I really got to a place of just being myself and choosing myself and continuing to do that, even if I'm in a relationship, right? And just continuing to have all of these like things I created for myself while I was single, and being able to remind myself of those things, even though I'm in a relationship, right? Okay, moving on to number 5. I really want to talk about discipline here, and also finding a flow that can really like lead to creating the dream life you have. Because I definitely, at the beginning of my 20s, I feel like I was operating on the very much go, 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 like, let's get this done. And it was coming from a very anxious place, like an anxious of it not getting done, and anxious of not being good, not being perfect, not getting the good grades, like not having a job right out of college. Like I was very much acting from that place. And even at the beginning stages of Vibe with 8, I was very much acting from that place of like needing to grow my page and like blah, 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 right? And so I feel like as I've ended my 20s and, entering my 30s, completing the Saturn return, this part, like I really do feel like I've been able to find that really healthy balance of being able to get stuff done while also honoring rest, while also like being compassionate for myself, and also just like knowing how to get stuff done. And I'm really proud of myself for that, because it wasn't easy. Because I feel like I went from one extreme to the other extreme. Like I went from one extreme of like, yeah, we're going to get all this stuff done, to then almost becoming like complacent and lazy, I will say. And so I feel like I found that perfect balance, and it kind of ties in with my human design as well. And so I think for anyone listening, like, I think it's important to figure out what's going to work best for you. And if you have these dream visions and aspirations and things that you want to accomplish, like, it is going to come with some hard work, and it's going to come with some discipline. I also like the word devotion a bit better. And that's kind of like one of the values I really lead by, is just being devoted to the things that I'm doing, and adding that element to it has felt really good in how I approach things. And so if you are, again, wanting to make these things happen in your life, you're going to have to find that right way of doing it, and then just allowing things to flow seamlessly and not trying to control everything. I feel like I was always trying to control every single thing. So I've really kind of eased up on that part, which has felt really great. Moving to number 6, relationships reflect your growth. And boy, did I go through so many lessons around relationships and friendships in my 20s, and especially in my Saturn return, that I'm very proud about this area. Growing up, I am an only child, was an only child, am an only child. I'm still an only child. You know what I mean? But I grew up having this like lone wolf kind of mentality, in the sense of like, one day my parents are going to pass. So I need to be in this fight or flight mode to make friends. I need to like put myself in these spaces to have friends. I also grew up watching, TV where you see the popular girl and the popular kids, and like, if you're not in that, like, it's not good. So I almost became this like survival being and that I did not need to be, but I did that, and I put myself out there and shifted and molded myself so that I would be accepted. And I wasn't necessarily in the popular crowd, I would say, at any point in my schooling, right? From like kindergarten to senior year, but I was in the middle, I wasn't like entirely exiled. I hung out, with my choir girlies and everyone. And I always was nice to everyone. I was in student council. My senior year, I was spirit director, and I was voted most spirited, because I always went hard on theme days. But I always like kind of operated from that mentality, and that kind of came into college, where I really wanted to feel accepted. I was in Greek life, and that's where like the drinking kind of got out of hand, because that's like what I was doing. I was going out to all these parties and wanting to feel accepted by people. And so I felt like I needed to drink in order to feel more outgoing and fun and all that kind of stuff. And like, if you meet me now, like, you guys might be surprised, because I'm very reserved and just like, I'm a listener, and I'm just kind of taking in, and I just like vibe and have fun, kind of thing. But I'm not the most loud person in the room, and I'm not the most outgoing person in the room. And that's okay. Right. And I think I've really learned a lot about that, and how that really shows up with relationships as well. Like, I feel like, a couple of my relationships in my 20s were definitely interesting choices. I can't believe I really said that. But, I think one of my first relationships in my 20s, I've only been with 3 people in my 20s. First one was right when I moved to Austin, just a couple months. I was new to Austin, but that relationship was very much like a need for validation. And I think we were both kind of like giving that to one another, right? Just validating one another and all of that. And then the second one was very much just like, we had kind of grown like an attachment to one another, because we had been through a lot of things with each other, through a pandemic and just all this really like, crazy stuff that we had gotten each other through. But, that was one where I felt like I really lost myself in the relationship, because I was trying to please the other person, and I started dimming my lights, started like not expressing myself. And, that one was really tough to go through, because then it also put me in a tough spot with friends, seeing me just like start to get smaller and all of that. Right. And so I definitely learned a lot in that. And I think that's what helped me, attract this most amazing and healthy relationship I have today. And then also I really learned how to be a good friend to others, and also communicate when there's, tricky things that come up in friendships. I had a couple like friendship fallouts that happened during my Saturn return, but then there was also like reunions and forgiveness that was really healing as well. And I think it allowed me to confront some of those things, right? There was points where I didn't want to let's push this under the rug, like whatever, like shut down. But I mean, I think, we're all here to help each other grow, right? And there's also like an element to this of forgiveness that I really learned how to forgive myself, right? And also forgive others, because they're also going through their own human experience, right? And I think a lot of the times we hold a lot of grudges and resentments, especially towards ex-friends or ex-partners, right? And I really had to learn just how to kind of like forgive through some of that stuff and see the humanness kind of behind it. But there's degrees to that, right? Because obviously if it was like truly harmful things, like I'm not going to tell you to go forgive that person, like to each their own on that. But to the level of things that happened, with these friendship fallouts, and then also just with the stuff that happened with my ex, like I just had to learn how to just forgive and let go and move on, because honestly, holding on to that stuff just like, it brings you down, right? Like you're just holding on to that. And I learned to just be like, you know what? I would go through that stuff all over again if it means where I'm at today. Like, I'm so grateful, you know? And it's funny, as I'm like recording this time last year, I was in Denver for Regenerate Festival. And that was actually a pivotal point because I had found some things out. I had gotten some news about some things. And I really was holding on to that stuff for like a good part of last summer. And by the time, ARC came around, I finally felt like I could like let go of that and be in this place of like forgiveness and acceptance, right? So it's interesting, right, how this can also kind of tie into these festivals and stuff that we go to, because this literally happened at a festival, and then by ARC I was able to like forgive and move on, and I think those relationships really can reflect your growth. And it comes back to the fact that like some people are really meant to be in your life for life, and some are really meant to be there in a season. And I'm also so grateful for the friends that were there for me through some really tough stuff towards the end of my 20s, right? And through my Saturn return. And that's why my 30th birthday party like just felt so amazing and so healing for me, because it was just a room filled with so much love and so many people who had seen me go through some really tough stuff and who had been there for me through that stuff and just had like loved me through it and held so much compassion through it all. And even like the newer people that were in my life who are maybe like catching up to some of those things, or who have seen me just absolutely glow and up level on the other side of those things. Cause my boyfriend now, he wasn't there for any of that stuff. Right. But he's been so instrumental in my own growth and healing in just this past year, and some of our friends as well. And so that's why like the 30th birthday was just like a really amazing culmination of just like all of the things with relationships, because relationships like really do impact me, whether it's like friendship or one-on-one friendships, relationships, whatever it is, like they do impact me on a deeper level than maybe most. I think because of the only child piece, right? Like a lot of people do have siblings and family to turn to. Like I do have my parents, right? But when I had a lot of that like turmoil happen, it just impacted me really deeply. And I think because of like the only child thing, and so I'm still trying, right? It's hard to balance, hanging out with friends and adult friendships and all of those things on top of like all the other things that we're doing in our lives and everything. So I think in my 30s, I'm trying to find that balance between family and friends and relationship. I think that's kind of like the word that's coming up for me. But yeah, a lot of like relationships in my 20s were definitely huge catalysts for my growth. And number 7, so the final one is your purpose evolves as you do. And really letting go the need to have it all figured out. I think one of the most jarring things was one time I called my mom and I was like asking her how to do this thing. And she was like, I don't know. And I'm like, Mom, what do you mean you don't know? Like, you're supposed to know everything. Like, she's always known everything. What do you mean? And that really like woke me up. I'm like, oh my God. And it's kind of that thing, like your parents are also living for the first time too, kind of thing. And so, the path that I'm walking has been very different than the path my parents have walked, right? And so I think it just kind of like showed to me, I'm like, oh shit, like maybe no one knows what's going on and what we're doing. And like, we're just on this floating rock. And maybe I just need to like ease up on everything looking perfect or having it all together. And, I thought my purpose like early on in my 20s, like, I don't know. It was kind of like I'm here. It really was like to experience life and to help people along the way, I think was kind of like what the vibe was. But like, even now I'm like, well, like my mission and purpose, I feel like is just even growing into something completely different now. Like, yes, there's an element of experiencing life, and yes, there's an element of helping people, but like, it's just becoming really clear that like, it really comes down to like, we do need to express ourselves, we do need to dance. We do need to connect. We do need these spaces. And raving and festivals are fun. And I think a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions around them. And I think I'm here to showcase like we can have these transformational experiences on the dance floor, and we need to, and we can heal through them, and we can heal with others, and we can heal in community, right? And like this doesn't sound all put together, and I don't think your purpose is supposed to be like my purpose is like fun fact, my coaching actually was purpose coaching. I was helping people find their purpose. And I actually stopped that like pretty quick because I was like, it's pretty hard to like, you know, sum up someone's purpose and their why to like a statement. Like I kind of did that. And now I'm like, you know what? Like after learning human design, it's like we're really all a piece to the puzzle. And I think we're all just here to learn about ourselves and learn about others and how we like interact with the world. And, you know, each human design type, there's 5 human design types. Each of those have their own purpose, really. And like mine really is following the things that light me up and doing cool stuff and teaching people along the way. Like that's kind of just like what it's been about, right? And there's like a gene keys element too, which is a version of human design. Human design is kind of like the foundation for the gene keys. I will bring on my girl Alyssa. She is my gene keys expert. I will bring her on to talk about this because you guys, it's life-changing. But yeah, I'm just finding that my purpose has evolved a lot throughout my 20s and at the end of my Saturn return even, and coming into my 30s, that I can't even like encapsulate it into words quite yet. And I think that's okay because I've gotten this far, you know, and I've been impacting people along the way. Like I've always just lived by the mantra of like, if this just helps one person, like my job is done. And that's with like a social media post, whenever I host master classes, like whatever it is, right? I'm like, if this just helps one person, like my job is done, right? If one person downloads this meditation and uses it for their next festival, which by the way, you can get that in the show notes, then my job is done, you know? So I think for anyone listening, if you're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what my purpose is, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, let's just like release that. You don't have to have it all figured out. And we can definitely hop on a human design reading and we can kind of like maybe start to put the puzzle pieces together of what it could be, right? But I think especially with all the craziness of the world, like do not put the pressure on yourself to have it all figured out, you know, give yourself that compassion and, you know, really come back to who you are, what your values are, and how you want to show up today. You know, what impact do you want to have on yourself or the people around you? And slowly but surely, like as you get older, you know, you might get more clarity around your purposes. I don't know what it was. I came into my 20s and I was like, all right, like coming out of college, I was like, all right, what am I going to be doing? What am I about? You know, that's just who I am. But a lot of people come into their purpose and their mission and how they want to show up to things and whatever, like later on in life, you know? So we've got time. Don't feel this pressure to have it all figured out. And especially as you start to dive into like this healing, or like if you start creating content or showing up as a leader of some sort or whatever, like you'll start to get like little hints and little whispers. Like my channel, like my connection to God, universe, the divine, whatever we want to call it, like this didn't start working until I started stepping into becoming a coach, right? And like tuning into my intuition and all those things. And ever since I started tuning into my intuition even more, it's like, boom, like channels just open, right? Before I, you know, start recording a podcast, opening up my channel and just trusting that whatever is supposed to come through comes through. Whenever I'm on a coaching call, I get these little like hints or whispers and I like tell the client, I'm like, I don't know, this is coming up for me. Like, take it, you know, and just trusting it. And so when you really do begin this like healing transformational journey, it just unlocks a lot for you. So just trust what comes, take what resonates, and just like, don't put this pressure on yourself to have it all figured out, or that you need to have a purpose, you need to have a mission, or whatever it may be. Right. And like, sometimes your purpose might be like, you're just here to vibe. You're here to make some money. You're here to have a family, and you're here to just like enjoy that, you know? And some of you might have something that's calling you to higher, like a higher purpose, right? Of wanting to be a leader, wanting to own a business, wanting to guide people, right? And no purpose is the right or wrong way, because we all have a part to play in this collective, basically. So, this has been, I was not expecting this episode to be a lengthy one, but we've just been going in. So, what I'm really leaving behind, I would say, in my 20s is not settling for less, knowing my worth and asking for it and adding to it, right? I'm leaving behind blocked throat chakra. Like, I am going to be speaking up for myself and expressing myself in new ways and just being seen. I'm going to continue being authentically myself. I'm no longer going to like mold myself for the sake of others, is what I'm no longer available for. And yeah, I'm just not available for anything unaligned and unfulfilling, honestly. And I think this could be something that, even if you are not entering your 30s, or even if you are not in and out of a Saturn return, like maybe just think about, what do you really want to leave behind and no longer be available for this week? You can literally change your reality and your life in a single decision, in a single moment. And you don't have to wait for the ending of a decade, right? And entering a new decade or an astrological event to happen. Like, you could literally decide right now that things are going to be different. So maybe just reflect on, what are you leaving behind, and what is like the new energy you want to bring forth into this era, this chapter of your life. And that could be a really fun journal prompt. And so some other journal prompts, if you're like wanting to journal, I'll put this in the description box, because maybe there's just like a lot of things that were coming up for you through this episode. And the one that, the next journal prompt that would be there is like, what is my Saturn return asking me to take responsibility for? And if you are not, if you are not someone that just completed their Saturn return or is entering their Saturn return, you could just be like, what is this season of my life asking me to take responsibility for? What are the things that maybe you're pushing under the rug that you need to pull out? Like, what are some of those things that you really need to take responsibility for? Another journal prompt is, what truths have I discovered about myself over the past years? What are some of those things that have come to light about yourself that, deserve to be expressed maybe? And then finally, what am I ready to leave behind as I evolve into my next chapter? What am I ready to leave behind as I evolve into my next chapter? Okay, and to close, I'm going to pull a oracle card from the Healing Waters Oracle. I just decided I'm going to pick a different deck each week and pull a card. So I'm just going to like lay them all out. I definitely want to get like a mic stand, so I'm not having to hold this mic the whole time, but just want to be able to like shuffle cards and actually pick one. But here's the card that I'm feeling. Ooh, okay, this is crazy. I didn't know that this was a card in here. Okay, the card is the ripple effect. Part of something bigger. Details are taken care of. This is actually crazy because this is very much in alignment with something that I can't quite talk about just yet. I'm like a big things coming DJ, but the ripple effect is something that I live by. It's something that is like an embodiment of my whole coaching ideology, because my belief is that if you impact one person, it goes on to impact the next person, and it creates this ripple effect. So it says, when wind blows onto water, ripples are formed. If the wind is consistent and strong enough, those ripples become waves, and those waves have the potential to gather momentum every step of the way. This card delivers the message of the ripple soon to become a wave. You're playing your part in the collective ocean of change. Maybe you know the part you play, or perhaps it's not clear. Your role in the collective ocean matters, and you're having an impact by the way you're showing up to your path. The ripple effect card could be a sign that a project or creation is becoming a bigger success than you may have previously thought it would be. Or it could be a sign that you're part of something much bigger than just you. Perhaps you're a drop in a giant ocean, part of constellation of souls here to create an impact on this world. The momentum is building. The details are being taken care of. Something swelling and growing. Don't get lost in the details. Rather, trust that momentum is building and will continue to do so. Swim your own race. Don't look around you. Something's happening and you're an important part of it. Success and momentum are on their way. And the Healing Waters activation says, I surrender to the flow of my destiny. I welcome more trust, ease, and support every step of the way. You guys don't even know I needed this card really bad. And I can't talk about why just yet. But this is crazy for me. And maybe you guys also needed this message in some way. If you are in a waiting room right now, waiting for something to be announced or discussed, or you're waiting for some type of answer, just trust that the details are being taken care of. And this could be something big for you, that can be just what you've been needing or looking for, right? So I know how this resonates for me, but I would love to hear how this resonates for you. And if you're like, I got nothing going on, just be open and maybe something's going to come through. Maybe you'll get a surprise announcement. Maybe you'll get surprise money. Like, I don't know. You just never know with the cards, but the cards always are right. The cards are always aligned. And so that is it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode and just me sharing a little bit more about all the things that I've learned really in the past decade of my life and in my Saturn return. If you enjoyed today's episode, definitely screenshot it, tag me on your Instagram story if you liked it. Or if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to like the video and leave me a comment. If you are listening on Spotify, feel free to give this show a rating. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, also give it a rating and a review. It would just help me so much as I am relaunching Let's Vibe Podcast out into the world. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in and vibing with me. And I will see you guys on the next one. Love you guys so much. Have a very vibey week. And don't forget to stay vibey. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.